Evaluation of sociocultural theory. So, what has sociocultural theory achieved and how is it different from other theories? First of all, we need to remember that sociocultural theory rejects the conventional separation between social and psychological aspects. It says but that when the learner comes in the classrooms, he or she brings his mind, that is psychology, as well as his or her social identity as a human being, as a social being into the classrooms. So if we want to know how does this learner learn and how can this learner learn a second language, for instance, we need to see the learner as a whole and not just focus only on his mind or only on his or her social context. So that is one thing. Then it also rejects this view of language as an abstract system that is just out there and people just pick and choose the words or and somehow use them for their own purposes. It says language actually develops in a social context and it has no existence beyond it. It also rejects the Chomskyan stress or emphasis of the universal grammar between the difference in your competence and performance. It says that language as a system it's a whole system, it's not a modular system, and we need to see language in holistic terms rather than dividing it into performance and competence, because these exists in a form of what we say a dialogical form in the mind of the learners. Similarly, it is distinct because it sees learning as a social and intermental activity. So it says, yes, do try to understand what happens in the mind of the learners, but remember that the learning will always begin in a social context. We all learn in the social context first, and then this knowledge is internalized or appropriated, and it all depends on the context in which we are learning, that the quality of learning depends on. Then the learning also depends on the zone of proximal development. So that is how much the learning available to us is there within our scope of learning or within our reach. But to reach it, we need some sort of social guidance to achieve it. But then we cannot possibly skip that stage and move on to something else. It has to be just within our grasp, beyond us, yes, but within our grasp, and that grasp can be facilitated by social interaction. And yes, we talked about this importance of the social in the learning of the individual. There have been several studies. Most of the studies are small scale. They are mostly ethnographic studies. You know what ethnographic studies are? Ethnographic studies are when the researchers go into some context and they give a long time to study that context in detail. Ethnographic studies are very helpful. However, at times they are narrow in the generalizations that they can make, because they are only looking at one specific site at a time. It tries to provide some insights into the classroom practices, into the classroom processes. Sociocultural theory has highlighted the importance of the classroom context. Sociocultural theory has highlighted the importance of the relationship between teachers and students, sociocultural theory has highlighted for us the importance of the relationship between students themselves, because all of them, according to them, will have an impact on the learning outcomes. There are some difficulties. They have tried to explain some causes, causal explanations, tried to make some cause and effect relationships, tried to make some generalizations. But as it happens in all studies that take place in natural context, there might be some aspects that they are losing sight of, and at times it is difficult to generalize because things differ from culture to culture, and that is why sociocultural theory actually places a lot of emphasis on the context or the sociocultural context. So that means what works in a second language classroom, for instance, in Africa, might not work for how things should be done in a second language classroom in Pakistan, or things will be different in second language learning in a rural context as compared to an urban context.